Hello. So this is just a kind of a thought-provoking discussion to talk about question 1.12.18 in the Collaborative Statistics textbook. Part A is list some practical difficulties involved in getting accurate results from a telephone survey. Some practical difficulties. Now when it says accurate results, what you always want to shoot for in a statistical survey is what's called a simple random sample. A simple random sample just means that any subset of the population has the same chance of being chosen as any other sample in the population. Which would essentially, the best way of doing that, it's impossible of course, but the best way of doing that is define your population well, and then assign every one of the members of that population a random number, or actually a number, 1 through n. Then create a random number generator, or use a random number generator to create a sample of the size that you need, then go get those people and bring them in and study them. It's impossible to do, because if you could do that, why would you even bother doing statistics? You know your population, so just go measure them. So the best thing you can do is drive a simple random sample, which is in some pseudo-random way, without knowing your exact population, go out and grab some of them. A telephone survey happens all the time, from Gallup to Quinnipiac to Rasmussen to CNN to Time to Newsweek to you name it. And what they use is they use random digit dialing. And there are different kinds of sampling, which you'll look at in 244. But one way would just be, suppose we were interested in getting folks in Oregon's opinions. So one way you could look at is generate 541 as an area code, and then generate 7 random digits, and then call that number. And then do it again, and call that number. And then the person that picks up the phone, then you get data from them. So some difficulties. Number one, if you do it that way, you're going to generate some impossible phone numbers. You know, for example, 541, 123, 5678. I think I skipped 4, but you get the point. That number doesn't exist in Oregon. So maybe you'd have to also randomly generate a local code. So 541 or 503, I guess, if you're doing Oregon. So 541 or 503. And you might want to weight those with what segment of the population is in each area code. Then randomly generate the local code, which is the next 3 digits. And you have to get cell phones too, and that's tricky, because now with cell phones becoming as ubiquitous as they have, you have to get them in the sample as well. And then the last 4 digits essentially are purely random. For years, actually, statistics instructors used the phone book. They'd open the phone book up and use the last 4 digits of every phone number in the phone book as a random number table, because essentially it's pretty good. Pretty sweet, actually. So that's one way, but the difficulties are that you have to make sure that you account for every single possibility. That's one difficulty. Once you've accounted for all the difficulties, you also have to deal with the fact that not everybody is going to answer their phone. If they have caller ID and they say you're calling from the Democratic National Convention during a polling year and you're calling at dinner, they're not going to answer that phone. If they do answer the phone, you might catch them at a bad time, you might get bad data. So you may have done the entire setup correctly, but still get bad data. And that's unfortunate, but that's also a reality. So telephone polls are very ubiquitous, they use them a lot, but there are some limitations to them. Practical difficulties involved in getting accurate results from a mailed survey. So this might seem better, because the argument that not everybody has a phone is valid. Almost everybody has an address. Well, I don't know the numbers on homeless, but I think it's probably going to be higher. So mail them a survey, right? Well, the problem with that is the non-response rate to a survey. I personally can attest to this to some level. I designed a survey for Bend Film, which started last night. And I don't know how many hundreds of people came to the showings that happened last night on 3 different screens. I had 19 respondents out of those hundreds. And this wasn't mailed. This was actually as easy as could be. A web address on the screen. They could type directly into their smartphone that took them directly to the survey. Or scanning with a QR code. Doesn't matter. Just because somebody has the ability to do a survey does not mean they're going to do it. I've heard the non-response rates on surveys can be as high as 90%. So if you're targeting 5,000, if you want to target 5,000 for a sample size, you may have to actually create 50,000 surveys in order to get the 5,000 that you need, because you're only going to get 10% response. Crazy. But that's the reality of gathering data, and it's the reality of trying to get data from a public that doesn't always want to give it to you. So, there's some ideas. Part C says brainstorm with your classmates. I encourage you to.